Well, Pope Leo has the 14th celebrated his first Mass. It comes a day after his historic election as the North American Pope in the Catholic, as the first North American Pope in the Catholic's 2,000-year history. Congratulations poured in from world leaders at the start of his papacy, including from Prime Minister Mark Carney. Carney offered his prayers and best wishes to the pontiff in a statement online, saying that at a time of global challenges, may he carry it forward a mission of solidarity, compassion, and dignity for all. So one of the questions that I'm going to ask you to weigh in on, folks, I mean, look, this story has garnered massive international attention, as it always has. In your opinion, or I guess first of all, have you followed this story? Is it something that interests you? If so, why or why not, whether you're Catholic or not? I think for Catholics, there's obviously an inherent something there to follow, obviously. Goes without saying, but not all Catholics. Some Catholics are indifferent to this, I'm sure. But for the rest of us, the rest of the world, and in particular even non-Christians or people who don't believe in a deity even or whatever, the spiritual realm, why is this so captivating, or is it? And do you believe that the Pope has a special, unique relationship with God, whatever God is or whatever that deity looks like? Because that is the fundamental claim behind all of this, is that the Pope has the ear of God, I guess, and some special channel to God. And I suppose by extension, these cardinals had spiritual guidance in electing the Pope. Or is it all just simply man-made and political when all is said and done? Is it just a political decision like anything people when human beings are involved and they're selecting a leader? So look, I'm willing to entertain any and all thoughts on the Pope today, folks, when we open the phone lines in about an hour's time. What are your thoughts on this story, on this development? Do you care? Do you not care? If you're a Catholic, is how important is this to you? How special is this to you? And again, it's not my intention today to rain on your parade or to discredit your belief. If you believe that the Pope, I don't share that belief, but that's fine. That's what belief is all about, right? And that's what faith is all about. Do you believe the Pope has a specially unique relationship with God? And if so, what's that mean for the rest of the religions? Does that mean all the rest of them are wrong and their leaders don't have a special unique relationship with God? Or can that be shared? Just some things that you can talk about. WestJet is suspending or reducing 9 cross-border routes for parts of the summer as part of the fallout from U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. With fewer Canadians choosing to travel to the United States, the airline says it's suspending flights from Vancouver to Austin from May through October, and again, a long list of flights in which WestJet is suspending or reducing as a result of this tariff war. Have you decided to avoid traveling to the United States amid the tariff war, and perhaps even beyond that, has your business been impacted by this? And if you're and look, we talked yesterday with a spokesperson representing musicians. Doesn't represent musicians, but is in that world, and he said that when it comes to musicians and artists, it's been absolutely devastating not being able to or not wanting to travel to the United States for a variety of reasons. J.P. Cormier was on our show a few weeks ago, of course, and he said that he is canceling and has canceled all his dates to the United States. And I'm curious what other stories are out there from you concerning travel to the U.S. Have you canceled your plans to travel to the United States, and has your business been impacted, or has business travel been impacted by this? Another story that I saw that grabbed my attention: Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese told his government colleagues on Friday that reducing student debt would be first legislative priority for his administration. That was returned to power in his nation's first election, in which the baby boomer generation was outnumbered by younger voters. So the reason why I bring this up is because student debt is a massive issue here in Canada as well, and not just young people, middle-aged people. I know people who are practically my age who have student loan debt, who went back to school to revocate in an attempt to make a better life for themselves economically. So would you support a similar initiative here in Canada to help students deal with debt? Do we need to do something to help them unburden themselves of this crippling debt, in particular young people who are trying to make a life for themselves? And are students too often racking up debt, taking programs with little or no chance of landing a good career or employment? Because, look, the argument could be made, look, students are too often, young people or whomever, shouldn't say just young people, are embarking on post-secondary education, taking programs that really there's no jobs. That doesn't lead to, at least directly to a job, perhaps indirectly it does. But is this something that we should consider as well? And of course, we can talk politics. Mark Carney, so far, has he met your expectations, or is it too early to tell? And again, lots of talk this week about his meeting with Donald Trump. And I think for the most part, people who called the show and have sent me emails feel as though he did all he could at the very least. Some people think he knocked it out of the park, but others, I think the general consensus is that he did what you could have expected anybody to do in a very hostile situation. That's been my take on it. And anyway, what's yours? And Pierre Poilievre, is he still the right person to lead the Conservatives? Can he work on his likability factor? Or should he stay exactly the same? Because there's an argument out there that, look, he did quite well when it comes to the overall vote, the popular vote, and he grew the seat count quite a bit. And if not for the demise and the collapse of the NDP and another, I guess, the Bloc as well, that perhaps we would be having a different story today. And the Conservatives may have very well formed a government. So what do you think Pierre Poilievre's future is? Again, some other things that you can talk about when we open the phone lines in about an hour's time. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Den Ness as well, of course, on the other side of the glass at the control boards, doing a fine job, as always. All right, a licensed baby eel fisher says he's been sending evidence to the Federal Fisheries Department of illegal fishing on the Nova Scotia River, but he says Ottawa is not acting. Stanley King, manager of Atlantic Elver Fishery, joins me to discuss this. Stanley, thanks for joining the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Todd.
All right, you got it. So let's talk about the river that you've been monitoring here.
So, we monitor all of our rivers that we fish during the season, and even after we catch our quota, we keep our trail cameras up. They're motion activated, and they send pictures to my cell phone. So we keep those up to make sure that no other people are, unlawfully harvesting elvers. And on one particular river just south of Halifax, these unlicensed fishers have just opened up shop, and they're there every single night for the majority of the night, and I can't get DFO to do anything about it.
What about years past? How might this say 10 years ago? What would have been the situation?
Well, 10 years ago, the vast majority of the population had never even heard of an elver. We had the most beautiful...
No, but I hear you. But I'm saying, Stanley, I guess that's what I'm saying. If you would have had widespread poaching, even 5-10 years ago, the reason why I ask is I assume that DFO would have reacted. Is that correct or no?
Yeah, absolutely. On the rare instances that we had unlicensed fishing 10 years ago, DFO was quick to act, very quick. And it's sort of night and day. The last 5 years, they have just checked out. And unfortunately, they won't admit that. We are almost sure that the directive comes straight from Ottawa. The river in question that I'm talking about today is a great example. It's for the last 16 days. 14 of those days have had 5 or 6 unlicensed fishers just taking as much as they can all night long. We call into DFO's report line every night while it's happening. We send follow-up emails to the head of the fisheries officers' organizations and the regional DFO every morning, and just still nothing. They just will not go. Now, of course, this has made a little splash in the paper since I started to make some noise. So last night, for the first time, we saw a fishery officer show up. But this fishery happens at night. So typically 8:30 p.m. to about 5:30 a.m. That's when you can catch fish. So these poachers are showing up at 8:30 promptly, fishing till about midnight or 1. We call them in right at 8 o'clock to let these guys know that, you should be down there. And last night, fisheries officers showed up at 5:30 a.m., just as dawn was breaking. So they knew that there would be nobody there. And it's what I've come to term token enforcement. They want to make it appear to the public that they are doing their jobs. That's why they're coming out with these ridiculous stats saying, oh, we've done 700, 800, 900 patrols this season. We don't have any arrests to show for it, or not many, but it makes it sound good. So, last night, I'm sure they'll tout that, oh, we were at that river last night. Yeah, but it was 9 hours after we made the complaint. It would be like calling the police for a bank robbery and them showing up 9 hours later and the police being dumbfounded why the robbers weren't still sitting there.
Okay, what are some of the fundamental reasons why? What do you think? Is it just sheer volume? Is it politics? What's going on here?
It's not volume, certainly not this year. And I want to stress that our fisheries officers are good people. They're excellent at their job. Make no mistake about that. And they want to enforce. That's why they are in the position they are. But, they've been hamstrung by Ottawa, who is clearly directing them not to enforce. And I strongly believe that political will is because, a large number of the unlicensed fishers are First Nation, and that's going to open up a can of worms for the government that they don't want to deal with. But, it's also a slap in the face because we've had turmoil in this industry for the last few years, as you know, and this lack of enforcement is shocking because the government told us, listen, we're expropriating 60% of your business without compensation. We're giving you nothing. But this is going to fix the problem in the fishery. So you're not going to have to worry about this issue anymore. So they took our business. We had to lay off people. The people that remain are going to get a fraction of what they would normally make in a season. And the poaching continues unfettered. It's just like nothing's changed. And DFO refuses to show up. They've got lots of opportunity. These guys are there every single night at 8:30 p.m., every single night for 2 weeks, and they just can't get there.
Okay, you said that there's been a directive from Ottawa to not intervene to DFO. Is there any documentation that supports that, or?
We can't find documentation because everything that we request from the government through the Freedom of Information Act, they redact completely. So I just recently got they call it ATIP. So it's where you ask the government for documents. They sent me 637 pages of documents, and 635 of those were completely redacted, just blacked out. So you can see the amount of transparency we get here. But where we're getting this information from is the officers themselves. They're frustrated. When we do run into them, usually during the day, they'll express that to us. Like, we would rather be out there enforcing. We want to do our jobs, and then they have to watch out what they say. But you can kind of tease it out of them. So like they're not letting you, right? And they'll give a nod. But you want to, yes, we do. It's very clear that they're being hamstrung.
All right. How much of a public safety issue is going on? We hear about threats and it's just it seems to be very, very volatile, at least potentially, if not factually. So how much of a public threat? How much is public safety being compromised here?
Well, there's certainly a public safety issue, especially if anybody confronts these fishermen. They're linked to organized crime. And both the RCMP and DFO have told us on multiple occasions, these are bad guys. Stay out of their way. Don't do anything to them. And a perfect example is just this week, the RCMP made a big drug bust in South Shore Nova. And what did they come across? Oh, a whole pile of Elvers. So, these guys are the same guys that are dealing in the drug trade, and we definitely have a public safety concern. We've had threats. We've seen gunplay in previous years. We've had altercations on the river this year, and, we feel like we are out there alone. DFO has strictly told the RCMP to stand down on any Elver-related calls. So when we call for backup, call for help, they say, well, no, that's a fisheries issue. We're not going to come. and DFO refuses to come. So, our fishermen are out there alone, and the industry boasts that we employ a lot of women. We support a lot of families that way, and not only the women are scared, we're all scared. So it's a real pickle, and DFO, it just won't do its job. During the season this year, we got about a 7% response rate from DFO. So that's how many times. So 93% of our calls went unanswered. It's shocking.
Where are they selling? How are they getting this to market?
Well, the same way that they've been doing that for the last 5 years. They're driving them out of the province to Montreal or Toronto. They're being mixed with legal eels to hide that from authorities. And we have some new regulations and a new traceability system, but just like lots of things, that keeps honest people honest. It's not impeding the criminals at all. So it's business as usual for them. On the river that I'm having so much trouble on now, we caught the river quota during the regular season. So it's a conservation issue. These guys have been, pillaging this river much more than it can withstand. And DFO acknowledges that. They say, well, we should really prioritize enforcement on rivers that have caught their quota. They're at their quota limit. But do they show up? No. And then it's hard for them to say, in my opinion, that, oh, well, we're busy, because it was 2 weeks in a row. Every single night, you're busy for 2 whole weeks. So it makes you think, well, are you systemically understaffed that bad that you can't make it once in 2 weeks to, arrest these guys? Or political will, which I think it's pretty obvious that that's the case.
Stanley, I appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this, and we'll talk again.
Okay, thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. Stanley King, manager of Atlantic Elver Fishery. Tough situation for sure. New St. Mary's University education programs, faster Bachelor of Educations aim to increase teacher supply. We'll chat with the president of the Nova Scotia Teachers Union when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, I saw this story on the CBC website. New and accelerated education programs could boost the teacher supply in the province by increasing the number of new graduates. New funding agreements signed between each university and the province show St. Mary's University has pitched 2 new education degrees, and other schools could tighten the timelines for their Bachelor of Education degrees as well. Joining me to discuss all of this is the president of the Nova Scotia Teachers Union, Peter Day. Peter, thanks for joining the show as always.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, so what are your broad strokes thoughts on this? Good idea, good plans, or what?
Well, I think when you look at it for face value, of course, we support the efforts to recruit more teachers, but I think the government really needs to take a look at what they're going to do to retain the teachers that are already in the system. Of course, we want to see teachers come out of university that are properly qualified and trained, so to continue with the workforce that we have. But we also have real issues of teacher retainment. Like, we have teachers that are leaving the profession. We know through studies that teachers in their first 5 years, a third of them leave the profession. And that's really not sustainable. It's not going to be helpful. Doesn't matter what programs you put out if the plan is, like, we look at this at face value and say, okay, the plan is let's pump out more teachers faster with maybe lowered qualifications, then we're only setting those teachers up for failure. And it's going to be a constant turnaround of needing to replace those teachers.
Okay, but that said, though, if this leads to more people entering the system, that I would think would have some type of positive effect, would it not?
I agree, yes, and we want teachers in the system. But I think, if you have teachers who are able to speak to their job right now, to speak to what they do, that they say, this workload is manageable, that I'm able to meet the needs of our student, and that they truly enjoy what they do, there's your recruitment right there. If you have teachers that are able to say these things and say them positively, that's going to get more teachers into our system as well. We need to ensure that this profession is a sustainable one and one that people want to be in. We just don't want to, again, lower some standards and push out more teachers. I am all for the government taking the initiative to, encourage students to become teachers, to encourage members of our community to become teachers, but make sure that they're given the tools. We don't want to set them up for failure, right?
And is that what's happening here? Do you think that these standards have been lowered?
Well, I haven't been part of the discussions for what qualifications are, and previous ones that have put out. I know that Cape Breton University did an 8-month program, and what that was, it was a shorter timeline, but it didn't change any of the course credit hours or any of the practicum outcomes. All those things were still in place. It was just the timeline was condensed. I know that in Tri-County, they did a cohort for individuals down there who wanted to be teachers, but were unable to travel to a university and do this. So it was a cohort that was done on evenings and weekends. They were able to get their VED, which was a very successful program. So when you look at coming up with new ways or novel ways of presenting the programs, I'm all for that. But if it's just going to be, hey, let's just make the qualifications less and just pump them out as fast as we can, that doesn't seem like a very good plan that's going to, sustain the teaching profession. I mean, you look at healthcare in Nova Scotia, we need more doctors. We need more health practitioners. We need those. Is the government going to suggest that we start lowering the qualifications of our doctors so that we can get more doctors out there for families? Because I think, families would want to be assured that they have properly trained, properly qualified doctors. And education is the same thing. You look, we're dealing with our students. This is our most valuable resource. And we want to ensure that they're getting their needs met. And classrooms today are far more complex than they've ever been.
Okay, modernizing something though, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, and I'm not saying that you're suggesting that, but expanding or streamlining something or creating an online component to it, I don't know that that's necessarily going to lead to a worse product. How do you know that that's the case?
So no, I'm not suggesting that. My concern is that the qualifications are maintained. We have many educational courses, master's courses that have an online component. I'm not suggesting that. I mean, we have technology now that enables people from the far reaches of the province that you don't have to just be right next to a university in order to do this. So that is a huge benefit. What I'm saying is that we can condense timelines, but I would hate to see qualifications just removed or shortened. Because again, we're these teachers. New teachers are going out, stepping into our schools, our school communities that are far more complex than they've ever been, and they have challenges that teachers, our veteran teachers, are struggling to meet the needs of our students. We have a shortage of specialists, our school counselors, our school psychologists, speech language pathologists, all of these specialists who do important work with our students. We have a shortage of those as well. And I would not suggest at all that, someone with the training needed to be a school psychologist should take less training. However, if the government wanted to open up the program so that there was more spots available to take that program and offer incentives for that, absolutely, I'd be all for that. I think that's important that we look at that. I just hope that the plan isn't, hey, let's shorten programs and just pump out as many teachers as we can. I think that would be we would be remiss to just expect that to work.
Peter, appreciate your time. Thanks as always. We'll do it again.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Todd.
All right, take care. Peter Day, Nova Scotia Teachers Union President. Tim Powers when we come back.
It's
time for our weekly chat with Tim Powers, the Summa Strategies, Abacus Data, friend of the show. Tim Powers, welcome, my friend.
I have a new team.
Florida Panthers. But they're letting me down. They're letting me down, Todd. I don't know what's happening in the world. The world is going the right way for you right now, which I'm happy for. I love you, buddy. But the Leafs, I can't wait for Matthew Tkachuk to just crush Mitch Marner. Is that wrong?
Wow.
Is that wrong?
Wow, that is absolutely wrong. And I think you're jealous. I think you're envious. It sounds, I can hear the envy over the airwaves, Tim.
Todd, it rarely happens, but for once, you were on a roll. I don't know what's happening in the world. Next, Donald Trump will agree to a free trade agreement with Canada. Wow. That is how cataclysmic what is happening with the Leafs is.
Well, look, I think the Leafs deserve some credit as actually having a pretty deep team right now. Don't you think?
Oh, we're going to keep going here.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, I guess you got to give Joseph Walk credit after Sam Bennett did the job on Stolarz. And I like Tanev. He's a hard man at the back there. And that guy they got from Philly, Lawton, he plays a good game. Yeah. All right, that's the nicest I can say. All right, we need to change subject right now or I'm going to be sick.
All right, sounds good. We don't want you to vomit on the air. That's the one thing.
No, we don't want that.
No, we don't want that. Okay, listen, I want to get your take on, there's lots to get to, but outside of the political realm, I suppose, the Pope Leo, how much of it seems to me that this story has garnered international attention, as it always has, but I'm getting the vibe from the last one of these, in which I was hosting talk radio as well, that it's not quite as gripping as it once was. Am I wrong? Am I reading this wrong, or what's your take on it?
I think it depends who your audience is. I mean, at Newfoundland and Labrador, we get a lot of interest in this because we still have a lot of Catholics, as you do in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI, but who are interested in this. I think it's hard to be focused on this, though, with all that's going on with Trump, though it is kind of fascinating that for the first time in, 2 million years, we have a North American there. But, yeah, the day-to-day intricacies of the Pope are not as prominent now as they once were. Maybe they will, because it's kind of fascinating that one of the most influential leaders in the world of 1.4 billion Catholics is now an American, and the president, obviously, of the United States is an American, and does the new American Pope have more political clout than the previous one did in speaking to some of the global challenges that Trump is addressing and creating.
I think politics plays into this at all. Obviously, the conclave, we don't know the inner workings outside of the movie and some books, perhaps. But do you think that politics might have been at play at all in choosing a United States?
This is inherently biased, but as somebody who went to Catholic school for 12 years, I will tell you the Catholic Church and I'm not even Catholic, I'm Anglican, but the Catholic Church that I grew up in was inherently political, as most organizations are, around issues that were important to it. And I think for sure it seems like what I've read about Pope Leo XIV, Mr. Provost or Cardinal Provost, is that he is in line with Pope Francis. And I think, not unlike the movie Conclave depicted, there seems to be a fight in the Catholic Church around how far reform should go. And Leo XIV seems to be in line with Francis on it going further. And that makes sense because I think there's in most religions, there's a struggle to stay true to your traditional core, but to connect with the modern audience. So I'm for sure there's a lot of politics in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, speaking of a lot of politics, let's talk about what happened in Washington this week. And of course, a lot of people with varying opinions on what happened in the Oval Office with Carney and Trump. My takeaway, Tim, was that Carney did as much as you could have expected and should have expected. Just my take. I don't know what else he could have done. What's yours?
Well, funnily enough, I was there the next day. I was invited down, if you can believe that. People sometimes like to hear my gums flap. I don't know why, but you only take 10 minutes a week, which is more than enough anybody should hear. But I was down there to talk about the Canadian election the next day after Carney had been there, and there were a bunch of Republicans and others who aren't Trump Republicans, but they come from the historic party. And the take in Washington from the Americans I talked to, and the Canadians as well, was that, as you said, Carney did as well as he could. He didn't get Zelensky'd. He got some key points in about Canada not being for sale, and most people thought his line on real estate was pretty clever. And he wasn't pushed over by Trump. At the same time, he was respectful, and the Canadian delegation was respectful. So I think good scores all around on that. Of course, the challenge is with this president, where do you go from here? So I think people are still waiting to see what shoe drops. The Americans and the Brits, as you know, signed a free trade deal, though I heard an early review of it that it's not as good as maybe Britain would like, but deals never tend to be. So good first step. Let's see what happens.
What about those who were suggesting that he should have been more aggressive and fought and talked, I guess, responded when Trump was spewing some misinformation about trade deficits, and then when he besmirched Chrystia Freeland, not even by name, but just by we all know who he was talking about. Some people felt as though Carney could have interjected there. What are your thoughts on that for those who believe that?
But you got to understand, I get those points, but again, this is not a one-off, right? This isn't an election campaign now. This is about trying to build a relationship to protect and grow the Canadian economy. And you know what Trump is like. He's baiting you. And sometimes you don't take the bait, and you find other ways to address the historical inaccuracies or factual inaccuracies. I think there was no long-term. Carney, it looks like, is playing a long-term game. He wasn't playing for, a moment in the White House where he was celebrated in Canada and around the world for standing up on a couple of factual misconceptions or blatant errors. So I don't think it was the time or the place to do that, because Trump's Trump. I mean, every minute there's a lie. If you spend your time correcting Trump's lies, you're never going to get anywhere. You got to find ways to work with him and work through him to get what your country needs. So I thought, again, Carney played that right.
Okay, there's speculation that Pierre Poilievre might have handled it differently. I suppose we could speculate all day on what somebody would have done or could have done, but do you think Poilievre, what do you think his approach might have been?
I think he would have been fairly similar, to be blunt. I mean, he hasn't come out and I haven't heard the Conservatives. The only thing I've heard the Conservatives criticize Carney for afterwards was that picture of Trump and Carney with the thumbs up. Yeah. Generally, I've heard Conservatives say Carney did an okay job. Like going in and throwing a punch. What is the point, right? At this juncture, there's times to throw punches. And you also wanted to get Trump here to Canada. You didn't want to create, he's coming here mid-June for the G7 summit. So, if you are going to correct and direct, better to do it on your home turf when you control the audience. He controls that White House audience and that whole setting. So I don't think Poilievre would, a long way of saying I don't think Pierre would have done much different in his first encounter either.
But I think that most people would agree that Mark Carney in that environment and that setting was is much better equipped than a Justin Trudeau would have been.
Oh, well, because Carney, so the problem the former Prime Minister had was he's performative in a different way than Donald Trump. Yeah. Both are performative. Mark Carney has not become performative yet. He's still approaching things like the person people wanted him to be when they elected him, a kind of button-down senior statesman who is not going to go into the to and fro of rhetoric and enjoy all of that, as opposed to focusing on trying to get some kind of commercial arrangement. I thought that's what he presented, and I think that's what people who voted for him wanted from him and want from him.
What's your take on Mark Carney so far? I mean, there's this halo effect that most prime ministers have. He's kind of in that halo phase, as mentioned. But once Parliament convenes, things could change. And what's your take on how he'll handle Andrew Scheer?
Yeah, Andrew Scheer, what's old is new again. I think that was a backward step by the Conservatives. I think Mark Carney's probably going to have the grace, will be given grace by a lot of people through until the fall. I think the more interesting Parliament will be in the fall. He's got this First Minister's meeting in Saskatchewan. That could get a little rough and tumbly because of Danielle Smith and some of what she's doing, but he's not being afraid to engage and interact with these guys. And I think he's winning some plaudits for that. I think right now there is still this moment of we're all in this together. So while that lasts, he'll continue. You called it a halo effect. I called it grace. He's got a runway, I think, Todd, until September before perhaps you see a mood swing from other federal parties in the provinces.
Why do you think Andrew Scheer was selected? Is he the
no
safe
threat
guy?
to Pierre
Yeah,
Poilievre.
no threat. Exactly.
The Conservatives didn't want to elect another Rana Ambrose because Rana, when she went in, did such a good job. She was lauded and praised, and people were jealous of her. And guess what? There's a lot of politics, a lot of jealousy. Pierre Poilievre, who's trying to get back in Parliament, didn't want to put somebody else in there who the star might shine on to take away from him when he comes back. So the small parts of politics played out in the election of Andrew Scheer.
Well, that says something about Pierre Poilievre and insecurity to a degree, does it not?
Yeah, and I mean, people have to judge that too. I mean, for me, I would have liked to have seen, maybe somebody, Melissa Lantsman's the name, from Toronto, well-spoken, a woman, gay, all kinds of diversity there that I think speaks well of what the Conservative Party, of who and what the Conservative Party is today, instead of a leader who had been rejected by the public. But hey, I didn't get to vote, so there you go. We didn't get Melissa Lantsman, who would have been fantastic.
All right, and speaking of parties and trouble and challenges, the NDP
do they still exist?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I read a story this week, and when you lose party status, I mean, it really, really neuters your ability as a party to do anything, almost anything in Parliament and in committees, right?
Yeah, ask though you can't anymore, the late Alexa McDonough from your neck of the woods. I mean, she was there in '93 when the NDP also lost party status, and it was a lot of work to get it back to the fore. I think the NDP will come back, but it's just so much harder when you don't have parliamentary resources, when you're trying to capture the attention of the public, and you don't really have a way into this debate right now because it's still kind of binary between the Liberals and the Conservatives on how we deal with the economic challenges that we have. But I wouldn't put the dirt over the NDP grave yet.
Oh, all right. So before I let you go, any wagers on Florida and the Leafs, your newfound favorite team?
All right. You know what? We're going back to the beer. I do think Florida's going to fight back, but if they don't, I will send you some beer. I refuse to wear a Leaf jersey, but beer I can do. All right. We'll do that. And if they don't,
yeah.
Oh, I don't know what I want from you.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. All right, buddy.
All right, Tim. Appreciate it, pal.
Take care. Bye.
All right, you got it. Tim Power, Summa Strategies, Abacus Data, a friend of the show. Nova Scotia Power cyber attack results in some serious, pretty customer information leaks, some serious stuff here. We'll talk about this with a security expert when we come back.
Facts.
All right, the cyber breach reverberates at Nova Scotia Power more than a week later. Some experts believe the breach has hallmarked of ransom attack, utility releasing very few details. Joining us to discuss all this is Tony Anscombe, Chief Security Expert at the company EST, which is a digital service company and a security systems installation and service provider. Cybersecurity company. Tony, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time, of course.
Hey, my pleasure.
All right, so what are your thoughts on this story in general? I know it's not in your neck of the woods, but what are your thoughts on this breach?
Well, it does. I probably agree with the theory of many other people. It does sound like it was a cyber criminal attack. Because taking data, exfiltrating data, which is what I think has been confirmed, typically comes from cyber crime, where somebody's going to try and ransom that money back or monetize that data in some way. The fact there is no we haven't heard whether it is ransomware, could be for a number of different reasons, though.
What would some of those reasons be?
Well, law enforcement may be involved because it's critical infrastructure. Then you'd have significant law enforcement activity because it's critical infrastructure that will be protected at a higher level than a regular commercial company. So law enforcement may be saying don't release certain information. The company may well have cyber insurance, and the insurer may well be telling them not to release further information. Or they're not sure the extent of the attack at the moment, and they're still investigating. I mean, there could be, like I said, there's a number of reasons why we may not be hearing too much at the moment.
Okay, so I think people are inherently on guard or concerned when information is not being disseminated by the company, and rightfully so, right? I mean, information is golden as people want answers here, and I think that's completely justified. What are your thoughts?
Well, it certainly is. I mean, there are certain bits of information that we can make assumptions from. And I say assumptions, and it's never that clever to make assumptions, but we know that there wasn't any disruption to the actual power grid. Mm-hmm. So I think it's relatively safe to say that the incursion into their network was on what I define as the IT side as opposed to the OT side. Now, what is meant by that is operational technology as opposed to information technology. So operational technology would be their electricity grid and the power supply, et cetera, and IT is the back office and systems and such like. So I think it's relatively safe to say it's on the IT side, but like I say, I caution that with it's an assumption. So, and then it's the extent of what data has been accessed. I think there is some discussion or theory that some of the employee data may have been accessed, but it certainly sounds like customer data was. And if customer data was, what does it include? There's a difference between personal information that is relatively public domain, and then there's information that's not. So somebody's name may not be deemed to be that personal, but if it includes financial data or billing data, etc., then it could be deemed to be quite personal. So it really depends what data has actually been accessed by the cyber criminal.
Are there no laws that require transparency with this type of thing? You already mentioned the reasons that perhaps why they wouldn't, but I would think that the public should have some protection here with this when this type of information is compromised. Pretty serious stuff here, Tony.
It is, and it is very serious, and we have to remember who the victim is. The victim is actually not the company. The victim is the person whose data may well have been stolen.
That's right.
So, we have to remember that. And yes, there are guidelines and laws, and those laws will kick in. There is privacy regulation in Canada, and that privacy regulation will require disclosure. But in the event there is an ongoing investigation into what happened and the extent of the data, the regulator may also be allowing them to hold off in sending that disclosure. But when that disclosure does come out, there are certain things that people should be looking for. Typically, in a data breach, you'd expect the company that's been breached to be providing some services to the person whose personal information has been stolen. That includes things like ID theft monitoring and obviously some good guidance on what they should do immediately if they deem anything necessary. And ID theft monitoring is a service where somebody will scan the dark web and look for the data. Is it being used? Is it being sold? Etc. and warn you if it is.
Okay, the fact that this is a monopoly, Nova Scotia Power, and that Nova Scotians have no alternative if you want power, this is what you deal with. Does that add to this as well? Because I mean, it's not like they can lose customers over this. Is my point.
Well, they lose reputation. I'm sure if they're a public company, their stock price will take a hit, and it doesn't do a company any good when there is a data breach. So there are lots of things, and they may well suffer a regulatory fine if it's deemed that they weren't protecting the data correctly or they weren't following the right best practice guidance that's out there. Then a regulator may step in and fine them. So it could be costly for the company. So there are reasons why companies need to keep cybersecurity in really good shape continually. This is a moving target, so to speak. Continual patching, continual updating, etc.
What advice do you give people who aren't getting any answers and who are concerned? I guess monitoring your credit, monitoring your bank activity. What else, if any, advice do you give people?
Well, if you do have an account, an online account with them, make the assumption that maybe your password has been compromised. It may not have been, but make the assumption it has if you're using the same password somewhere else, which you shouldn't be. Yeah. But if you are, then go change it elsewhere. But also be on the look for phishing emails. Now, this could come from two places. Yeah, if some data has been taken by a cyber criminal, they may well use the data and some of the richness of that data, i.e. they know maybe when your last bill was or how much energy you've used or something. So look for emails that may be using that data. If you suspect them to be phishing, then delete them, contact the company themselves and ask whether they sent it, or log on to your account and see whether it's, well, once their systems are back online, and see whether that's what they sent. But also, other cyber criminals may well speculate here. A lot of data is out there from other breaches. So if I can suddenly turn around and say, well, I'm going to email everybody in Canada with a phishing email that pretends to be Nova Scotia Power, then they will do. And they'll put in phishing links and try and gain other information. So other cyber criminals may well try and attack people on the back of this without actually having any data other than somebody's email address from other breaches. So be on the lookout for any phishing emails that land in your inbox.
Tony, always interesting. Appreciate your insight very much, and we'll do it again. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, take care. That's Tony Anscombe with the cybersecurity company EST. Your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. What is on your mind on this Friday? I'm sure that there have been some things that have been discussed that you've agreed on, and I'm sure that there are some things that you've disagreed with. It's all good. Let's have a chat. Give us a call at 902-405-6000. The Catholics, the 1 point whatever billion Catholics, have a new pope. Pope Leo the 14th has celebrated his first Mass. First American Pope in North American Pope in the Catholics' 2,000-year history. So what, have you followed the story? Are you interested in the story? Does this get too much attention in your opinion based on all the things that are going on in the world? Or is it a good distraction even, or does it deserve the attention that it gets in your opinion? And do you believe that the Pope has a special, unique relationship with God, whatever God is? Do you believe that? Because that is the claim, that the Pope is in touch with God in a way that no other human being is. And do you believe that? And if that's the case, I'm not baiting you, I'm not mocking you. I don't want to mock you. I don't believe that, but if you want to have an opportunity to share that experience and why that perhaps brings you comfort, then do so. It's an opportunity for you to do so. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. We can talk politics if you'd like. I know we get into a lot of politics on the show, but that's kind of the nature of talk radio. It lends itself to a political conversation. But what are your thoughts on Mark Carney, of course, and the job that he's done so far? And I don't know what else there is to say about his meeting in Washington other than what's already been said. But perhaps you've got something else you'd like to add to that. If so, give us a call. 902-405-6000. Also, the cell phone ban coming this fall in Quebec schools isn't sitting well with some students. That's on the CTV website. Students who spoke to CTV News on Thursday say they disagree with the ban, calling it unfair and goes too far. And here's a quote from one of the students. "If I need to call my mom, I should be able to call my mom." That's one of the quotes from a student. Last week, the provincial government announced plans to ban phones in elementary and high schools for the entire school day starting in the fall of 2025. The government said the decision was made to promote socialization among youth and to reduce distractions during school time. Now, students are planning a walkout to protest the new measure, and the move is gaining traction on social media. Well, look, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if you have a cell phone ban in schools coming up, kids are going to not like it. I think that's pretty evident. Not all kids, but I would bet that most kids probably don't like that. because it's an addiction. It's so you cut anybody off from their addiction, and initially they're not going to like it. But the argument that parents need to have constant contact with kids, is that valid? I don't know. I don't have kids in school anymore, so I don't know. We didn't have this problem when I had that kids of that age going to school. But I know that Vanessa has a daughter in school. And Vanessa, I think you keep regular contact with her, and I'm not criticizing you by saying that at all, but that is something that you are accustomed to, right?
Yeah, I am. Usually she'll end up texting me during the like when she's in the hallways or in the middle of classes because she's a high schooler.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes we do get regular communication.
Okay, so would you feel lost a bit if you didn't have that ability to have that regular communication with her?
No, I don't. I wouldn't feel lost. She's supposed to be in school.
Yeah.
So her main priority should be.
Well, I guess disconnected. Would you feel disconnected in some way if you weren't able to have that contact with her?
No. I mean, when I was growing up, we didn't have that kind of communication. Our communication was we would have to go to the principal's office to be able to call.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So for myself, no, not really. But at the same time, we also live in a world where there are a lot of lockdowns. Yeah. There are a lot of issues that happen that we don't actually hear about until after the fact or during the situation.
Yeah.
Because there have been a couple of times where my kids, where my kids were in a lockdown where I found out about it through them and not through social media channels or the teachers.
Sure. Yeah, so you're saying there could be it could be useful during those times?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But those would be the only times. There is no need for a child to be contacting the parents in the middle of class.
Yeah, some would say, though, I've heard that counter argument to that a lot of disinformation can get sent around about lockdown to what's going on, and a lot of high hysteria can kick in as a result of that.
Yes, that is true as well.
Yeah, okay, so your take on a cell phone ban, you'd be okay with that in schools?
I don't know about a full-fledged cell phone ban. I think if the students were told to keep them in their locker, or if they were to just have them shut off in class, I don't see an issue with it.
Okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000. Thanks, Vanessa. What's your take on this, folks? And should students have a say over if there's a cell phone ban or not? Because, look, they're impacted by this. So should they have some type of a say over it? What's your take on this? 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Alan's giving us a call. Alan's a first-time caller as well. Hello, Alan.
Oh, hi there. I'm going to talk about an issue that's not that important, but I think you can shed some light on it.
Okay.
With respect to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think they've been in business for 108 years, and despite they've never had a Nova Scotian in their lineup. And I think there's around 15 or 20 Nova Scotians wandering around with Stanley Cup rings. Probably another 50 or 100 that have been in the NHL. So I'm just curious, the relationship, why it's the most popular team. Also, they did have a coach. Remember John Brophy?
Yes, I sure do. Yeah.
And they paid him less than any other coach in the league. He was from Antigonish. He got them into the second round, and then they fired him. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know why they don't pick Nova Scotia players. Maybe this is a curse. But then in terms of a business organization, you look at it, you look at the business where you work, where I work. Mm-hmm. The objective is to offer a quality product at a competitive price.
Yeah.
Well, the Toronto Maple Leafs over the past, I'd say 50, what is it? How long has it been? 58 years?
Since 1967 is the last time they won the Stanley Cup.
Well, they didn't even reach the finals. They haven't even got to the finals.
Yeah, that's true.
And yet they charge the most for a ticket and offer the worst product over 58 years. So I don't understand where this fan enthusiasm is for this franchise in Nova Scotia.
Well, look, I'm sure that people are fact-checking you right now in your claim that not a Nova Scotian ever played for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm not disputing that, but I don't know. I can't verify that either. To me, that sounds amazing. If that would be the case,
amazing.
yeah,
it's astonishing.
Yeah, it's astonishing. It is. But look, I hear this all the time that why do people support the Leafs despite the fact that they've been so woeful over the years? I can't answer that, Alan. I really can't. But obviously they've connected with the country and with the base, and it is strange. But look, the Chicago Cubs I mean they were since. I mean, the Boston Red Sox, for goodness sakes. How many Boston Red Sox fans do you know, or have you known growing up?
I'm a Boston Red Sox fan.
There you go. So since 1918 until they broke the curse. So
you had to persevere. You had to persevere. But in Nova Scotia, where there have been many opportunities for the Toronto Maple Leafs to pick a Nova Scotian, and as you know, we have great Nova Scotian hockey players.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's been the problem. Maybe we haven't had a Nova Scotia player on the team.
Maybe that's their curse. But one thing we know for sure is the 10 or 15 guys wandering around Nova Scotia with Stanley Cup rings probably wouldn't have got it if they'd have been playing for the Leafs.
There you go, Alan. All right. I'm not sure if you're trying to antagonize me or what you're doing today, but anyway, it's working.
Okay, good to talk.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Yeah, it'd be nice to have seen Sidney Crosby in a Leaf jersey for sure, wouldn't it have? Or Nathan McKinnon or Brad Marchand even, or there's a long list of amazing Nova Scotia hockey players, past and present. There's a very long list, and I didn't know that. If he's factual, that's strange that the Leafs have never had an NHL player. I'm sure that somebody, or a Maritimer, or a Nova Scotia player rather. I'm sure that somewhere people are fact-checking this right now. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. And I knew this would happen. Somebody sent me an email saying that there was indeed at least one Nova Scotian who's played for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Al McNeil, born in Cape Breton, played for the Maple Leafs, as did Flash Hallett from North Sydney, according to Ken. So that said, though, if there are only two, and they're not exactly household names by any stretch, that's still pretty astounding that just two players have played for the Toronto Maple Leafs in their entire history from Nova Scotia. That is, I would never have bet that. So it appears as though at least two, and I trust Ken's source. It's pretty good. He knows his stuff. 902-405-6000. So again, quite interesting. Maybe that's been the Leafs' problem. Not enough Nova Scotians on the team. 902-405-6000. Jackie, hello.
Hey, I'm just calling to comment on the cell phone ban.
Sure, in Quebec.
I have a couple of teenagers. I have one that's in grade 11, and everybody might not share my opinion, but I think it's important that they are allowed to have their cell phones, not in class, but just allowed to have them. I've had my teenager actually call me from the washroom because she was being bullied and scared to come out, and I've had to get a hold of the principal after her phone call. So had she not had her cell phone, I'm not sure what would have happened there. And, you know, these kids, some of them are old enough to drive. So if they're old enough to drive, they should be old enough to know when is appropriate to have their cell phone and when isn't, in my opinion.
Yeah. That said, though, I think it's if you were a teacher, I think clearly it would be a huge distraction and take very hard to police, I would think, though. You agree or disagree with that, Jackie? Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. I don't mean have them in the classroom, but I mean respectfully have them on their person. I have worked in the school system here in HRM, so I do understand that it's difficult, but I do think that they should be allowed to have them and, you know, use them if needed, but not in class. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for the call.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right,
Bye-bye.
all right. Take care. 902-405-6000. And another email on Nova Scotian Leaf players. This from Marty says the Leafs have had a player from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, named Jacob Quillen. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. Play one game for them this season. He's currently with the team, but has not played any games in the playoffs. As well, the most popular team in Canada is not the Leafs; it's the Montreal Canadiens. You can look at their TV numbers when you add up French and English TV numbers. They are number one. So there you go. There's another Nova Scotian who played for the Leafs. Just one game this year, Jacob Quillen from Dartmouth. So there you go. 902-405-6000. I knew the fact checker would be out, and I'm glad that you are. Tony, hello.
Hello, Todd. First of all, with Carney and Trump, Carney did a respectable job, in my opinion. He did the best he could. He was in the Lions' den. All the Lions were lined up. If you remember, if you take a look at it, it was the exact lineup that he had with Zelensky, the exact chair seating for all that were there. They were just waiting. I don't know if they were waiting or they had been told to sit in the back, because J.D. Vance generally doesn't sit back. He's the attack dog in those situations. But I thought Prime Minister Carney did a good job. I give him a C rating because Trump did not allow him to speak. He got 3 minutes time, but when he did speak, he spoke as eloquently as possible to the situation. I thought he did a good job. Now, let's move on from there. Let me ask you a question, Todd.
Okay, sure.
I've been watching CBC News now for over an hour, and all I see is the Bishop of Toronto, the Bishop of New York, the Bishop of here, and the Bishop of there, and anti-Catholic and pro-Catholic people. And I mean a steady hour of this on the CBC News. Mm-hmm. Nobody is mentioning the fact that the Canadian unemployment went to 6.9% this morning.
That's true, you're right.
Yeah. Nobody is mentioning the fact that it went to 6.9% this morning. So, and nobody is mentioning the fact that it's only at 6.9% because there was a large hiring of public service workers since Carney became Prime Minister. Now, is that him? Or I don't know what they mean by that public service, but the issue says that there were 33,000 jobs lost, 31,000 jobs were counterbalanced with this hiring in the public sector. I don't know what that means in the public sector. I really don't, Todd. I'm not BSing.
Right.
What is the public sector? Municipal? Federal? Is it provincial? Is it private enterprise? I don't know what that means. So, but I think now, and one other thing, with Polyev is inconsequential at the moment, Todd. Mm-hmm. He is totally inconsequential. And they got a lame duck who is going to be their representative in the parliament. You know that. I know that. The public knows that. Mm-hmm. Wasted a lot of time on that. When Polyev comes out and he wins his riding, which he's obviously going to win, then maybe you and I and the rest of the public can say, well, you know, you lost the election and you're right on the same vein, or he might come out with a new game plan. I don't know. But talking about him and injecting him into what's happening in Canada today is not doing Canada any good, as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at this from an outsider. Mm-hmm. I really am. I don't feel like I'm part of it, but I can certainly look at it. And Todd, I don't know what you think about all of that, but there's some interesting things going on here. Keep the eyes on the prize. Yeah.
Well, when it comes, I'll just, I guess, first of all, on the Polyev thing, I would disagree a bit in that he's relevant in that he's still the leader of the party, and he is going to get a seat back, and he is going to be the guy that's going to be, after a small hiatus away from Parliament, he's coming back to Parliament. So, therefore, he does remain relevant in that sense, Tony. Agree or disagree?
Not in... I have to agree with you to an extent, and here's a but. He is not relevant in what's happening in Canada's actual day-to-day operations today. He has no impact on it. None. Yeah. You know, did he have that? Can he fix this unemployment? No. 6.9% unemployment, Todd. Yeah. They're already projecting that they're going to lower the interest rates. Well, that's nice. That just lets the public go deeper in debt, and already carrying a heavy debt. Mm-hmm. So he does have relevance in that he's pulling the strings. Yeah. He's pulling the strings for the Tories for sure.
On the Pope thing, I would say, Tony, it's more of an entertainment factor than anything else. And pardon my sarcasm here, but what are you doing watching the CBC for 2 hours?
Oh, no. On and off. I have several news channels, but
I know I'm only kidding you. That was meant to be a jab.
I know you're just poking at me. That's the way you are. See, I thought we were buds, and now you kicked me right in the butt. All right, I'm going to come after you. I'm going to try and set you up someday. Not this week, but maybe next week.
All right, pal. Appreciate your input as always, my friend.
Weekend.
All right, take care.
You too.
All right, 902-405-6000. When it comes to the Pope, look, I think that people are, for whatever reason, I shouldn't say for whatever reason, for a lot of reasons, they're entertained by this. There's immense tradition. There's immense legacy here. And people are highly, highly interested in this. I'm not, but people are. And that's one of the questions that I'm throwing out there. Are you intensely interested in this? Is it getting the attention that it deserves, or way too much attention? Or cell phone bans in Quebec, students are going to push back. They say they're going to walk out of school. Big surprise there. But should kids have more say over this? They're highly impacted by this. What are your thoughts on that? Or whatever else you've got in your mind. The way to reach us, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. And thank goodness we have attentive listeners who are on top of things, because I'm not always. I'll admit it. Tony mentioned an insurgent, or rather an increase in public sector workers in the federal government since Carney took over. A couple of reasons for that, according to Colin. One of them says the number of public sector was 30,000 plus people hired to run the election. That makes sense. And Barry says that summer employees are coming back to work as well. So that makes sense as well. So thanks, Barry and Colin, for paying attention and bailing me out. One call at a time. I appreciate it very much. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. I'm going to read this email, then go back to the phones. Doug says this, says, the Pope and the Catholic faith do not believe he has direct line to God. I am not a Catholic, but I am a Christian, and we all believe we can talk with God and that he answers. Sadly, you, an atheist, and no, I'm not an atheist, so you got that wrong, want to raise your misinformed comments on your talk show. And now we hear your buddy Tony spewing misinformation about CBC. I was listening to this morning, and the employment rate was on the newscast. I'm beginning to wonder why I even listen to your show. Well, thanks, Doug. I appreciate that very much. I do appreciate you listening, but I'm not your comment. Sadly, you, an atheist, wants to raise your misinformed comments on your talk show. How would I describe myself? Agnostic, I guess, is that the term? I believe that perhaps there's something larger than us that's out there that is bigger than us. I hope that there is. I do. I really firmly believe and hope that there is. I don't dismiss that there's more to what's going on than we see. But I don't believe that any man-made, man-created religion has got it all figured out. I don't believe that. And I would challenge you, Doug, on your comments that the Pope and the Catholic faith do not believe he has a direct line to God. I don't know where you come up with that, because I'm quite certain that they do believe that. But anyway, Catholics, give us a call. If you're a Catholic out there, do you believe that the Pope has a direct link to God, a closer link to God than anybody else on earth? 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Anyway, again, 902-405-6000. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Kevin. Hello, Kevin.
Good morning, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Good. We're going from talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs to the Pope.
There you go.
Quite a wide range, my friend, isn't it?
It was.
Okay. I'm listening to some of these comments. Excuse me. I'm a Roman Catholic. And Doug, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I thought the most appropriate thing to do was explain to people and all your listeners who may not realize out there the belief of the Roman Catholics have. Now, we believe, and this may explain a lot, we believe that the first Pope was St. Peter. This title was conferred upon him by Jesus Christ, who said, "Thou art Peter, the rock, upon whom I shall build my church." We believe that the popes are a direct line back to the first Pope, St. Peter. Mm-hmm. And we believe that they, as a direct line from St. Peter, are indeed God's representatives on earth. As a figurehead, as a symbol.
Right.
Do you understand?
Yep, sure.
I'm explaining this so people that don't know this. This is Roman Catholicism.
And I'm glad that you are. I'm glad that you are.
I'm not defending this.
No, that's fine.
But I'm explaining it. Now, as far as the coverage on CBC and the other networks go, you have to understand the Catholic Church is one of the most powerful institutions on earth. The Catholic Church reaches into many, many things. It reaches into the economy of the world. It reaches into the political spectrum of the world. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand the Catholic Church is very, very, very powerful.
Absolutely, it is, 100%.
Now, I'm going to give you one more quick incident to illustrate what I'm saying. When Pope John Paul II, he was from Poland, I believe. And at that time, the Soviet Union was threatening to invade Poland. And the Pope said, if you go into Poland, I will go back to Poland myself, and I will stand by my countrymen, and I will fight with my people. And did the Russians invade Poland? No. That's all it took.
Right. Yeah.
Do you understand the impact that the Pope has?
Yeah, sure.
And to answer your question, as Catholics, we believe the Pope is a direct descendant of St. Peter, the first Pope. Do we believe that he is holy? Well, that's for higher minds than mine to make a comment on that. Mm-hmm. Does he have a direct connection to God, which I believe exists? I believe he's his representative on earth.
Okay. And Kevin, that's church doctrine, is it, by the way? Is that church doctrine?
Yeah.
It is, eh? Okay.
Yeah.
So Doug was wrong then when he suggested that I was wrong.
Know what he's talking about.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate the call,
Thank
pal.
You. Take care.
Take care. 902-405-6000. There you go, Doug. Take that. No, I'm just kidding around. I'm just having fun with Doug because he took a shot at me. I don't mind that. That's what it's all about. I can handle it. 902-405-6000. Brian, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, you?
Good. Have you heard about, this is completely off topic of what everyone has discussed today. Have you heard about what is happening to the Sunken Lake Scout Camp in the Valley?
I have not. What's going on?
Okay. So the Sunken Lake Scout Camp has been in existence since 1920. Don't quote me on this, but if I am, I might be correct that it is North America's oldest scout camp. The scout camp has a new neighbor, though, called Sunken Escapes. The scout camp has had deeded access to a shared road since 1920. Sunken Escapes this past weekend, while scouts were there camping, had placed up a barrier and sent a cease and desist letter to the scout camp, preventing them from accessing the road in the future. The volunteers for Scouts Canada aren't allowed to comment on this, as it is now, I'm sure, going before a judge. But that doesn't mean I can't call and comment on this. And it's just I've been a small business owner pretty much my entire adult life, and it's just this kind of thing where, like, what are you doing? Like, is Sunken Escapes, what are you think? Do you think the community is going to be on your side? Do you think you're going to help anyone by preventing kids from going outside and enjoying nature and camping? Like, what do they have in their mind when they put this barrier up and think that this is going to fly?
Well, Brian, I'm not aware of the story, and I haven't researched it all, so I'm hesitant to comment on it based on.
No, I just want other people to know that this is going on. Yeah. You can look it up; it's all over Reddit and social media.
Okay.
Like I said, Scouts people can't comment, but I can. And yeah, it's gross when small businesses do stuff like this.
Okay, Brian.
It's dumb on their part. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Megan, hello.
Hey, Todd, how are you?
I'm well, you?
I'm good, thanks. I wanted to chat about banning cell phones in schools and really hope that this is a trend that's going to continue across all of Canada.
Okay.
I absolutely agree that they should be banned. They should be turned off and kept in your locker all day for those kids that drive or walk or whatever. They should have phones outside of school. But during recess and lunch, I think that these kids and teens, they need to be talking to each other and having face-to-face social interactions, like all of them, the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm sorry to that woman that called in, her daughter who got bullied in school. It is terrifying, but we all got bullied too. Maybe not all of us, but a lot of us did, and we made it through. We couldn't call our parents. There is a book. It's called The Anxious Generation. Every parent needs to read this book. The evidence is insane that supports the correlation between when smartphones and social media, became on the rise, like in around 2010, and the increase of mental health issues in our teens. It's so scary. I worked as a nurse for 15 years, most of that spent in a children's emergency department. And when I started working there, we maybe had 1 or 2 teenagers, like 10 to 15, 18-year-olds, come in with a mental health issue. And when I left working there just a few years ago, we had like at least 7 to 10 patients per. So I've seen it unfold right in front of me, and everyone was wondering, well, why? But the evidence is there is that these phones are destroying our children's experiences that they're meant to have. Like, they don't know how to talk, they don't know how to cope anymore. It's really, really scary.
Yeah, and and you're not slamming youth kind of with a broad brush. I think you're making some good points. This is a real issue that we need to wake up to, or it's going to get completely away from us.
Absolutely. And I think, like, as adults, we have the issue too, but in your teens, when your brain is developing, it is so crucial. And you have to have this play-based childhood. That is how you learn to become a good human. And our phones are destroying that. And our kids are going to hate it. They're going to hate their parents. They're going to hate the teachers. But they'll get over it. It will become a new normal to not have your phone at school anymore. But I think it's something that we all have to stand up for. Yeah,
and the other concern that I hear is the amount of and again, I'm not deterring anybody who feels as though medication is necessary. Anxiety meds have played an important role, and so I'm not dissing that at all. But the proliferation of young people on anxiety meds is concerning, right? It's concerning.
Yes. Yep. And there's been a huge increase in all of that too. And it's not normal. It's become our new normal, but that doesn't mean that that's how it has to be. Yeah.
And what's the long-term effect for people on anxiety meds from such a young age, right? That's another concern. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, Megan, I hear you and I agree with you. Thanks for the call.
Just one more point. Go Leafs, go.
All right. Good stuff. Thanks, Megan.
Talk to you later.
All right. Take care. Go Leafs, go. 902-405-6000. So what's your take on any of the things that you've heard us discuss today? Do you believe that the Pope has a direct link to God, as one of our previous callers suggested that he does? It says that it is indeed church doctrine, and I believe that it is as well. They call him the Holy Father for a reason. And then again, today is not. I'm not mocking you if you believe that. I don't share that belief, but I'm curious for those of you who do believe that. And does it bring you great comfort and great peace? And if it does, I guess so be it, I suppose. What's your take on the attention that the world has given the new Pope selection process? Or whatever else you want to get into, including a cell phone ban in Quebec, and students are protesting and saying that they've been left out of the equation and calling it unfair. And one student said, if I need to call my mom, I should be able to call my mom. One student told CTV News yesterday. What's your takeaway on that, or anything else you've got in your mind? 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, continuing with your calls. The way to reach us, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Some of you talking about Pope Leo the 14th is celebrating his first Mass today. One of the questions that I've asked you is, how interested are you in this story? Have you followed it closely? Do you think it's gotten too much international attention? And do you believe the Pope has a especially unique relationship with God? That's just a question. And again, I'm not baiting you. I'm not trying to mock you. I don't believe that. But if you do, tell me why you think so. And what comfort and peace might that bring to you? Also, a cell phone ban coming this fall in Quebec. Schools isn't sitting well with some students. Students spoke to CTV yesterday, said that they are planning on I guess some type of a walkout or a protest that's gaining traction on social media. saying that it's unfair, absolutely unfair. What are your thoughts on this, folks? Do you think that government should move ahead with a cell phone ban in schools across the board, regardless what kids have to say? Or do you think kids should have a say or input in this? 902-405-6000. Ken, hello.
Hi, Todd.
Hi there.
I finally figured out why Trump hasn't got the Ukraine-Russia war stopped in a day, and why he hasn't got the Gaza conflict stopped.
Okay.
It's because he had so many phone calls to make to the Vatican before he signed an executive order to make the U.S. Cardinal the Pope. I'm just waiting. I've been checking CNN and waiting for him to give an explanation how he did, but he hasn't come on yet.
There you go. All right. Tongue in cheek, right, Ken?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And but to answer your question, like I was born, raised Catholic or whatever, and any special connection there to God? No. Look at all the U.S. evangelists and everything that have the $1 million houses and all this stuff, and they got caught doing this and caught doing that, and then the next show they're crying, asking for forgiveness and all that. It's been a farce for a long time.
Well, Ken, listen, I share your cynicism, unfortunately. I was once very, very religious and no longer am, and as people know, but I would like to think that my belief, Ken, is that I don't know what's next, if there's anything next. I legitimately hope that there is. I wish I could manufacture the faith to believe for certain that something exists beyond this life, but I'm not dismissing that, and I hope that there is. I legitimately, honestly do. That's so, and I don't know what category I would fit in. I guess if it's agnostic or what it would be, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I hope that there's something on the other side too. Would be nice, but like my mother sang in the choir, my aunt played the organ at the church and all this. I was an altar boy growing up, so I went through the whole 9 yards.
Yeah,
it's just that once you get older and you start looking at the broader things, and what's going on and all this stuff, you get to be a little more skeptic.
Yeah, absolutely. Cynicism sets in for sure. Thanks, Ken.
Yeah. All right. Have a good weekend.
All right. Take care. 902-405-6000. Hello, Gloria.
Hi, Todd. I hope the sun comes out and it gets warm.
Yeah, there you go.
Todd, I'm going to say something that probably won't make me very popular, but I want to talk about the sexual abuse within the Catholic Church and how Pope Francis has not dealt with it. And I'm hoping and praying that this new Pope will. I listened to Gemma Hickey, Ending Clergy Abuse President, on CBC the other day, and he and his group are adamant that the Catholic Church will be forced to deal with this issue, and they're demanding that the new Pope act on it immediately. He was an abuse survivor, and he spoke of the many victims in the area where he lives. And the priest who was responsible was shipped to a residential school in British Columbia, where there are many more victims. So he went right over to Rome. He wrote a letter to the cardinals demanding change. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, for sure. And Gloria, God knows how deep the atrocities have gone when it comes to sexual misconduct. I think we have no idea how deep this goes, and that's
Listen,
sad, right?
If you look at the addicts out there in the street, half of them were abused. That's why they're there.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot of people can't live with this. They commit suicide, and they don't only abuse them; they threaten them not to tell anybody. And people put their little boys in there to be an altar boy and thinking that's a good spot. And what do you think happens to some of them? Now, all of the priests aren't like that. I'm not putting a black mark on every priest, but there are a good number of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And until this Pope comes out and deals with that, that's what I left the Catholic Church because of the abuse.
Yeah.
And I don't mind telling people.
And Gloria, the other thing as well is that the only reason it ever came to light was because of victims who had the courage to bring it to light.
Like this Gemma Hickey.
Yeah, exactly.
From Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And he came out, and he's very adamant about it. And he was able to live through it and to deal with it.
Yeah.
And a lot of Catholics don't want to hear that. They don't want to talk about it. But I'm talking about it, and as I said, a lot of people will not like what I had.
Well, that's all well and good, Gloria. That wouldn't be the first time.
No. Have a great weekend.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Greg, hello.
How you doing, Todd?
I'm well, you?
Good. Now, you're the Pope. I mean, the saying that he's the only one who can hear from God, well, okay. But anybody can. You call God, God will answer you, okay? That's still small voice. Doesn't matter who you are, right? Okay? That's what the Bible says. So, yeah, the Pope is there, and he may hear from God, which he probably does. But so does the guy, the housewife, or the guy working a job, or they can hear from God too. And it's just not how do you say,
exclusive.
Relegated to one person.
It's not exclusive.
No, it's not exclusive. And as for the Catholic Church, yeah, my dad told me some stories that when he was a young boy, and just it turned him off. But the thing is, I think if they continue to deal with it, now whether this guy does or not, I'm not sure. I don't know. But I think if he does, it can go a long way. I think it can go a long way to heal things and make things a lot better. Because you can't change the things in the past. All you can do is change the things in the future. That's
true.
it.
That's true. Okay, Greg. Thanks, pal.
Take care.
All right, take care. And Len, you're going to have the last say today. Go ahead, Len.
Yes, I would just like to say we've got a new pope now who looks like a very excellent man, and it took all these cardinals had to really decide who was going to represent the leader in the Catholic Church. And I don't think we should be bringing up this other stuff right now like Gloria has and about the abuse. The abuse never just happened in the Catholic Church. It happened in every sector that you can think of. In all the religions it happened, the sexual abuse. In politics, in everything, in workplaces. So don't condemn the Catholic Church just because of a few priests that should never became priests to start with. But my idea of this man what an excellent man this is, this new pope, who worked for many, many years with the poor in Peru. I mean, let's give him a chance, for God's sake. Don't condemn him. I just want to say one other thing, Todd. Many years ago, I heard a very good speaker, a theologian, speak, and he said, what was told 2,000 years ago and what is told after that 500 years ago, who would you want to believe? Things that happened 2,000 years ago when Jesus was born, making all these miracles and everything? Or do you want to listen to people that are talking today and 500 years ago? My opinion is listen to the persons that lived during when Jesus was born on earth. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, Len, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Take care. All right, thanks for the calls, everybody. Again, it's appreciated. We'll open the phone lines again on Monday between 11 and 12. 5 things to know about South Korea's military submarine pitch to Canada. Scott Taylor when we come back. For the story on the CBC website, a pair of South Korean shipyards, usually fierce competitors, have teamed up on a $20 billion to $24 billion proposal to sell Canada 12 of the country's latest submarines, known as the KSS-3. The pitch was made in a detailed, unsolicited proposal to the federal government delivered in early March, just ahead of the federal election. Joining us to talk about all of this is Scott Taylor of Esprit de Corps Magazine. Scott Taylor, thanks for joining the show.
Always a pleasure.
All right, so you've got some pretty good knowledge of this whole story, right?
This has been a big push from Korea for quite a while now. This was I was actually over there in Busan in April of last year when they were launching one of the KS-3s, and they were trying to get the message through that they got, of course, the economy of scale. That shipyard in Busan is unparalleled. I mean, the amount of stuff that they can put out there, and the number of hulls that they're building, the number of people working there, it's just crazy. So that's what they want to get across, is that they are prepared to work together, both Hyundai and Hanwha, both of whom are currently making the same KS-3 submarine, like in sort of tandem. They're each making the ship for the Korean Navy. So the idea of them working together to sell it to Canada would be an ongoing. I guess the Korean government decided they would keep sharing the workload if they would made a joint pitch to Canada. Which again, I mean, it's a fairly bold proposal for Canada to acquire 12 diesel-electric submarines to be operating in the future. It's I know it's the vision of the current Navy Commander Angus Topshee, but it's still, I mean, if they're looking at the first boat being into service in 2035, if this thing goes forward, so still a midterm project for everybody.
All right, so why not build them ourselves domestically?
I think we have realized that we just don't have the technology necessary to build a submarine. I mean, a warship itself is a complex challenge. Having a warship that can go underwater is an even different case than having the pressure hulls. I mean, there's only certain people that have specialized in that in history. I mean, there are other bids out there. The Spanish are pushing a boat. There's a German. In fact, the German design is the one that they're going to sell to Norway. There's a lot of push right now to get the Canadian Navy in on that project on a three-country basis. But the Koreans do have a strong argument because they're pushing forward for Canada, not just in naval warfare. They're also, Hanwha makes a huge array of military armored vehicles, which they've been selling around the world to Australia, to Poland, and in each of those cases working with their industry to develop capacity. So what they're bringing to the table isn't just simply, buy our stuff off the shelf. They will invest in Canadian industry at the same time to allow us to maintain these things moving forward. All right. What type of costs are we potentially looking at here? So the Korean proposal for the 12 is they're looking at $20 to $24 billion. And I'm presuming that's in Canadian dollars, but the budgetary officer had said that if the Canadians go forward with a 12 submarine purchase, we're looking at something well over $100 billion. So they're far in the bargain bin if proposals right now at the moment. But it's also they're saying they can deliver all 12 by 2035 or 4 of them anyway. So which is then much faster timeline for us getting them into service, which I think is the biggest fear for our Navy, is that if we go any appreciable time without having an underwater capability, we will lose that forever. It's going to be pretty tough to train a submarine force back from nothing. And right now we're basically in a drown-proof mode, given the very few number of days at sea that our submariners have had in the last 2 years. I think it's below 60 in total for the last 2 years. So if you don't have trained submariners, you can't go to sea, and if you can't go to sea without trained submariners, so it's very much a conundrum right now. All right, tell us more about the capabilities and some of the characteristics of these subs, Korean subs. Well, the 3 stands for 3,000 tons. That's the KS-3, and that's what the range that the Canes are looking for. I think the capacity is that they need to be able to go underwater on a continuous basis for 21 days, which the KS-3 can exceed that. But this would give us a limited but not total under ice capability in the Arctic on both coasts. So that's what they're aiming for. Obviously, if anybody truly wants to operate submarines in the Arctic, you're going to have to go with a nuclear-powered option and then remain up there virtually indefinitely. But that's not an option to us policy-wise from our neighbors to the south, which is, again, a reason why I think that the Koreans have got a better shot now, because they are pushing to the Carney government to say, look, you've already declared the American defense contractors to be an unreliable source if the government's policy changes towards Canada, so you should be, finding other nations upon which to rely. All right, when it comes to technology and in particular weaponry and software, is there a concern that this stuff can become quickly antiquated, outdated? Well, that's what people said. There's a kill switch on the F-35 that the Americans supply them, that they can prevent that, but it's actually the software upgrades that they can deny us, or they can, in fact, as we've seen in recent stories, they moved spare parts, which the Danish Air Force thought that they were theirs, and then they shipped them to Israel because they needed them there. And apparently, if you have spare F-35 parts in your inventory, they still belong to the U.S. government until such time as they're installed in your plane. So to not have control of your supply chain or being dictated by someone else is not really a sovereign Air Force.
Okay, cost overruns and all that goes with it. What are the any concerns about potentially cost overruns as we're seeing here in our own domestic shipbuilding?
Well, I think if we truly go for an off-the-shelf idea that we're going to take it from them and not try to Canadianize everything and then try to change the specifications, which we have done appreciably with the Type 26 design that they're building for the Canadian Surface Combatant at Irving Shipyard. That they still haven't cut steel as far as I know, and that project has now been ballooned up. People again talking about it ending up costing more than $100 billion to build 15 Canadian Surface Combatants, which would be an astronomical cost per frigate. But that's mostly on the Canadian Navy that keeps changing what the requirements are going to be. And in this world where everything in terms of technology changes virtually overnight, it's impossible to predict what you're going to be operating 50 years from now.
And the crew size, about 33 from what I'm reading here?
On the submarine, yeah, which I think is the smaller you can make that submarine crew, the easier it's going to be for us to actually operate them, because right now that is one of the biggest problems that we have in terms of putting those submarines to sea is having qualified personnel on board. And like I said, if you can't put the submarine to sea, then you can't qualify more personnel. So it really is a case of you can't just force feed a starving man. It's got to be done with a plan over time.
All right, what's your instinct on whether or not this comes to fruition or not?
One hopes it does. One hopes that we see some action. We've had a lot of words during the political campaign by the Carney Liberals that they're going to get to 2% or beyond of GDP spent on defense, and we're well below that now. And basically, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I joined the military in '82. I've been covering it since I became a journalist in '88. I have never seen things this bad. This is we need everything, and of course everything costs a lot of money, and we need from submarines to new fighter jets, which we've agreed to buy. I think it's 16 or 18 F-35s, but we could look elsewhere, and the Koreans are offering a solution. The F-A-50 seems to be a copycat version, the Korean cheaper version of the F-35, which again we could send a clear message to the Americans about our importance of defense, but at the same time non-reliance upon them as an ally.
But again, when looking at GDP and spending per GDP, this lends itself well, I was supposed to appeasing Donald Trump and his concerns about that. Money well spent, I suppose. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's as long as our military can digest what they're given. I mean, as long as they don't just buy them 12 submarines that sit and get rusty because we don't have a plan in place to make sure that there's enough submariners to make full use of them. Same thing with, at one point we had a shortage of pilots for the Air Force, for fighter pilots, and the answer was to buy them more planes, which I didn't understand. I mean, if we don't have enough to fly the ones we have now, why are we getting 18 used ones from Australia to refurbish? It would seem to be the case that we just need to work with what we have.
Okay, Scott, always appreciate your insight. Thanks so much, my friend.
Have a great weekend.
All right, take care. Scott Taylor of Esprit de Corps Magazine. Fixed-term lease loophole eroding Nova Scotia's tenants' rights, according to some who appeared in front of a legislative committee this week. We'll discuss this further when we come back. All right, joining me here in studio is Heather Clark, chair of the Halifax-Mainland Chapter of ACORN. Heather, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, what is ACORN for those who don't know?
Well, ACORN is the Association of Reform for basically Change Now. We are a tenant union in Nova Scotia and right across the country. We have over 160,000 members, and we have 3 chapters just in HRM alone.
Okay, fair enough. And at issue today is fixed-term lease, and what you would have called a loophole, eroding Nova Scotia tenants' rights. A committee would heard some, I guess, testimony, if that's the right terminology, this week. Advocates for Nova Scotia renters took the government to task for propping up what they consider to be an imbalanced landlord-tenant system that does not effectively protect tenants' rights. Reading this from the Chronicle Herald. For those, let's kind of go fixed-term lease 101. Explain what these are and why they are creating a challenge for so many people, in your opinion.
Okay. So fixed-term leases are a type of lease that is legal right across the country. but Nova Scotia is the only province in the country that's having a problem with them. And what they do is they provide tenancy for a tenant for a specific amount of time. They're meant for Airbnbs, vacation properties, short-term rentals, anything under 12 months. Mm-hmm. So at the bottom of the lease, it says you must vacate the property within 12 months. It's typically a 12-month lease that they give. And it says you must vacate the property at the time. So what's happening is landlords are using them to ask tenants to vacate the property without fault, even if they're a good tenant and paying rent. And that way, whenever they take in a new tenant, they can increase the rent to whatever they want and get around the 5% rent cap.
Okay, what do these statistics tell us when it comes to how much this is being used or abused?
Well, with the report that I provided and what I talked about at the legislature the other day is Gary O'Toole had mentioned that there's not enough data to provide support saying that they're being abused. This is a type of abuse, but we have compiled a report that shows that they are being abused, and statistics show that a lot of people are being evicted without cause on a fixed-term lease. And I talk to people daily that happens to. Most recently, a senior couple, the spouse is disabled, and they have been renting for 4 years on a fixed-term lease and have been asked to vacate. So they can increase the rent by $500 a month on the next tenant.
Okay, I had Kevin Russell on the show who represents investment property owners yesterday, I believe it was. And he suggested that the numbers were something like less than 5%. I think it's something like that people have a fixed-term lease. What's your response to that? Is that erroneous or? Well,
I also heard Kevin Russell say that there's no evidence.
Yeah.
So if there's no evidence, where did he come up with the 5%?
Yeah.
We have done study. We've got a report that was done in Nova Scotia alone, and it shows we surveyed 243 tenants right across the province, and the numbers are a lot higher than that. Mm-hmm. And the numbers of evictions on fixed term leases since 2021 have grown 466%.
Okay, that's the number that he called into question. So how did you
we
get
surveyed tenants in Nova Scotia alone.
How many tenants were surveyed?
We surveyed 243 tenants alone in Nova Scotia. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the report, I might add that report that I'm talking about was presented at the legislature last October as well, right, in Law Amendments Committee meeting. Mm-hmm. And when I went to the legislature the other day, what they do is they send out a research package to anyone attending in advance that they can look at the reports and the data. And that report was in the research package that they sent out to everyone in attendance. And Gary O'Toole said that there was no evidence, so obviously he didn't read the report.
Wow. So so you said the 466% was a result of surveying how many tenants again?
243 tenants.
Okay, and you feel that's a sufficient sample size?
That's just in the province of Nova Scotia. We can't force people to come forward.
Yeah.
People are being intimidated. There's repercussions that they're facing within the tenancies, within the units that they're renting. So people are scared to come forward. But that report was compiled within about a 6-month time period. It was a very short time period. And I don't know if you're familiar with ACORN or not, but we're a nonprofit organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We don't get money from the government to support us. We go by donations alone. And we have folks with MBAs that put this information together for us. Mm-hmm. But we don't have a lot of money to sit down and reach out every tenant, whereas the government does.
Sure.
Because as of last year, there's a registry for landlords that shows there's over 5,000 landlords in the province, and there's over 60,000 units. So in order to get this data, all they need to do is access their own data on the landlord registry, which is part of Service Nova Scotia.
Right.
And Gary O'Toole is the Deputy Minister of Service Nova Scotia.
Okay, so what needs to happen here? What needs to change, I suppose? Because the Kevin Russell says that having a fixed term lease, and you've already alluded to the fact, does have a play or a space in some instances, depending on the dynamic of the arrangement.
Well, if you look at that report, IPONs, which is Gary Russell's organization, formerly known as IPON, in their report, they showed that they use fixed-term leases for short-term solutions only. Yeah. But a lot of these people, actually most of these people that we surveyed, have been on a fixed-term lease for 8, 10 years. Yeah. So it's not a short-term solution. And personally, myself, I think it's discrimination. They're discriminating against new Canadians. They're discriminating against marginalized seniors, people with disabilities. And if you talk to Dalhousie Legal Aid, they have a lot of data as well, because they've been dealing with a lot of these folks that are being evicted, and a lot of people that they've tried to evict illegally. They have a lot of data that shows the percentages of the people that are being evicted are seniors and people with disabilities. Whoa. And 1 in 5 of those people in our report shows that they were evicted more than once, and 1 in 5 has been left homeless.
So if somebody's had a fixed-term lease for 9 or 10 years and suddenly, or whatever the time frame is, and suddenly they're being evicted, perhaps they should have had a different lease agreement. Maybe that wasn't the correct arrangement initially. That
is correct, and people are not understanding that because it's not being explained to them. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage anyone who is taking out a lease in Nova Scotia to ask for a periodic lease, right, unless they want to rent for 12 months or less. Yeah. And I will point out, Kevin yesterday, he said something that confused me a little bit. He said that after 12 months, it's switched into a periodic lease, but it's not. That's not the fact. That's not the truth. I think I don't think he purposely meant to mislead people. Yeah. I think that it was just a slip of what he was saying. Yeah. So you should always ask for a periodic lease unless you want something for a 12-month time period or shorter.
So you're convinced, and you've got a pretty extensive, thick report here, which you brought me, and I appreciate that. You're convinced that something needs to be done in order to curb the abuse of fixed-term leases. Bottom line. Absolutely. Bottom line. Landlords are using it as a loophole to get around the rent cap, so they increase the rent to whatever they want. Mm-hmm. And one thing I will point out is that when property values, especially rental properties, are determined by the rent that they charge on the property. Yeah. So, the higher the rent, the higher the value on the property, then they can pull out equity, do whatever they want. But at the same time, that increases property taxes. And not only does it increase their property taxes, but everybody in the neighborhood. Yeah. So when people are complaining about values getting overinflated, and, we have a member who actually wrote his thesis on this. Mm-hmm. And when people complain about property taxes and property values, a lot of it has to do with the rental market. It's directly tied. Wow, very interesting. Heather, a lot of great information here. Is there a place, can people access some of the stuff on your website, online? Actually, yes. There's actually a meeting this Saturday, 11:30, Nova Scotia ACORN and Chocolate Lake on Herring Cove Road. Mm-hmm. And then also you can join our Facebook page, Nova Scotia ACORN. And also we have an Instagram account, and a lot of that data is on there as well. Okay, Heather, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, take care. Heather Clark, Chair of the Halifax-Mainland Chapter of ACORN. Sports with Cecil, Allister as well. Lots of other things coming up. We'll be back. All right, it is a Friday. That means we're on the cusp of a weekend. That means not only a regular weekend, but a Mortgage 101 weekend, Clinton, and that gets me excited. How about you?
You know what? I love Friday, but there's nothing more than I love a weekend when Mortgage 101 is on the radio. Yeah, and I know that you like to, and Kelly and I do this from time to time, go for a drive on a Saturday or Sunday between 10 and 11 and listen to it on the radio. There's nothing like making that connection. Right? You know what? I think we sound pretty good on the FM. I will say sometimes I do listen to it on the digital platform. Yeah. I have a Spotify speaker at home, and a Sonos speaker. That's what I'm trying to say. And I'm able to listen to it there. But you know what? We sound pretty good on FM. I will say. Absolutely. And this week we get as always, lots of great stuff we get into. But in particular, I thought we had a great couple of segments with our guest. Oh, we had an awesome guest on, and I think I really, obviously encourage people to tune in all the time, but I think you should really tune in this time. We had Sandy Burns on from Manulife Bank, and we talk about really trends in the mortgage market,
and what's going on with fraud. Fraud Awareness Month was in March, so we really talk about that.
That was a really interesting chat about fraud, I thought.
Yeah, and obviously she brings some very interesting perspective, obviously being at the top of the house for Manulife, and just seeing how the policies that they're making are really impacting consumers.
Yeah, and of course we covered the political sphere as well with a pretty big week with Mark Carney at the White House and the new Liberal government, so we get into that also.
Certainly. And I mean, what is going on with the feds really does have an impact on consumers. We may think, hey, politics doesn't impact us, but it really, really does. Yeah. And obviously, you and I know a lot about Mark Carney doing so much with the Bank of Canada, but it's very interesting seeing what will happen, I think, in the coming months, especially in Canada. What's going to go on with the Bank of Canada? Is the governor going to change? And a lot of economists are projecting that the Bank of Canada is going to cut the key overnight rate by maybe up to 50 basis points between now and the end of the year, which would be awesome. That means I think, of a variable rate mortgage, we're going to see a lot of those in the threes, which is, I think consumers would be very welcome to see.
Yeah, and we wrapped up the show of talking about the Halifax market and the condo market, and some other really pertinent, relevant things, and credit, of course, and some of those nuts and bolts of mortgage lending, which we always cover.
We certainly do. And, mortgage lending can be so daunting for people, Todd.
Yeah.
And, I really thank our listeners to be listening to us. It's so daunting. And I think some of our listeners, maybe have not had a mortgage before. Maybe they currently do. And I hope that we really are bringing some good content. And I think this weekend show is awesome.
Yeah. And for those who miss it, if you don't get a chance to listen to it live on the radio on Saturday or Sunday, 10 to 11, and you can certainly check it out. It's 11 to 12.
It's 11, 11 a.m.
11 a.m. to noon. Oh, that's right. Okay. But you can certainly check it out online, so let everybody know all the ways they can consume it online.
They can certainly check it out on our website at teamclinton.ca/radio. There's links to all our social posts, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you want to listen to your podcast, you can find it. And you can also listen to it here on the 95.7 website as well. All our whole content calendar is on there of all our previous shows. And you can certainly take a listen. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message or Todd a message. We'd love to talk about what you want to hear.
Absolutely. Mortgage 101, your guide to home ownership, goes Saturday and Sunday on our airwaves from 11 till 12. And as mentioned, if you don't get a chance to hear it then, check it out online through the channels in which Clinton has already disseminated. Clinton, always great, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Todd. Have a great weekend.
You got it. That's Clinton Wilkins, our mortgage guru. Mortgage 101, your guide to home ownership. Don't miss it. We'll be back. All right. So that said, we're going to shift gears here and chat with our weather specialist and get all the ins and outs of what's happening via the weather, and we'll talk about frost and what else are we going to talk about?
There's always something we can talk about in the weather. That's the great thing about it.
Exactly. All right, so let's just dive right in. Sure. I heard this morning. I heard your forecast. And I get mad because you were talking about rain tomorrow. I want to rake leaves and the things I want to do tomorrow, and you're screwing my life up.
I know. The rain has not. I mean, okay, we've needed the rain. It's been beneficial, but it's been happening at least for part of every weekend for the last little bit, and it's people are getting a little frustrated because we have that wet weather on the weekend, and then the sunshine returns on Monday when everyone's going back to work. So it's not working out too well, but it's beneficial. This is a time of year where as we've talked about before, it's been dry, and we do need rain to keep things from getting dried out with the trees pulling on all that moisture to come into full leaf, and this is the time of year where the wildfire season is kind of at its peak in Atlantic Canada because it gets so dry and we have relatively low levels of humidity at this time of year, so we need it. It would just be nice if we could have maybe a little more of a balance, or maybe shift that rain onto Monday instead of Saturday. But unfortunately tomorrow's looking pretty soggy, chance of showers and drizzle in the morning, and then rain in the afternoon and some showers Saturday night. Not a great deal of rain, 8 to 15 millimeters, but enough to push your plans maybe into Sunday. Sunday looking a bit better. I think quite a bit of cloud cover. It was looking a little more optimistic earlier in the week that maybe we'd clear out a bit more than what's currently forecast, but it's looking like Mother's Day will be mainly cloudy. A chance of showers, not a washout day, but looks like a few showers will likely pass through, unfortunately. But at least it's not a weekend of wall-to-wall rain. We'll get a bit of a break by Sunday.
Well, typically when the weather's not good for the weekend and you come in on Friday, I usually go boo, hiss, boo, hiss. So I'll do that now. What do you think?
Sure.
Boo, hiss.
I'll take it. Hey, as long as I get cheers for the next sunny weekend.
When it's great?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Let's talk a little bit about frost. When can people finally not have concerns about frost?
So it really depends on where you are. I mean, the garden centers are opening up pretty much everywhere now, so people are eager. And I know if you're a seasoned gardener and this is, somewhat of a hobby, people have probably been prepping already for several weeks now. But it really just depends on where you're listening, because obviously we have people listening all over the province. Here in the Halifax area, the average last frost date is April 30th. That's actually a bit sooner than the previous 30-year average. It used to be May 3rd here in the city, so it's moved up a bit. In general, right along the Atlantic coast of Nova Scotia, it's about, late April, first week of May. So we're pretty much in a safe spot for the Halifax area. I mean, obviously there's always a risk that it could get a bit chilly at night at this time of year, so we can't completely rule it out, but we're heading into safer territory here in the city. Inland for HRM, it's usually the second week of May, so we're into that now. So I'd say between now and around next week we'll be moving out of that period. But if you're in parts of the valley and northern Nova Scotia where there's higher terrain, South Mountain in the valley, the Cobgood Mountains on the North Shore, the Cape Breton Highlands, it's more so the average last frost is late May, and in some cases it's early June for the extreme interior of Antigonish, Pictou, and Colchester counties. So there's still some time to go for those areas. Now, it's just an average. It doesn't mean that it will necessarily be the case. I mean, the average last frost, as I mentioned, for Halifax is April 30th, but sometimes it can happen a bit later. No signs of really that happening here at this point in time, but just something to keep in mind that, the frost risk is not gone, especially farther inland and farther north and east in the province. And if you have more sensitive plants to frost, having the ability to cover them up with a frost blanket or something, or bring them inside if you can. It's interesting because I guess some plants, especially vegetables, actually a frost can enhance them or change the flavor of them. So some people like a bit of frost for certain vegetables, but generally, I mean, if you're a seasoned gardener, I'm sure you know all the risks and you have the precautions in place in case there is a risk of frost. But generally for the Halifax area, we're heading into safer territory. We're past the average last date, but just certainly keep an eye on the forecast. And in my forecast, I'll be certainly outlining if there's any frost risks as we move forward.
And then, of course, this is the time of year for pollen. Pollen's exploding everywhere, isn't it?
This is a big time of year for pollen. I mean, looking out over North End Halifax, all the trees are starting to green up, and grass pollen too is a concern for many people. So, we're starting to get into that time of year where seasonal allergies are becoming a bigger factor too. And I mean, obviously that will, for a lot of people, subside in the coming weeks, but it can persist into the summer too, especially when we get into more of the weed pollens too. So it's an interesting story I did when I was working over at the Herald. I was able to speak with some experts about pollen here in Atlantic Canada, and the seasons are somewhat shifting for two factors. Climate change is one. We're starting to see, because it's getting warmer earlier, the trees and the grass are coming out sooner, and we're seeing those pollens arrive sooner than they used to. And even with construction in cities where you have weeds and different grasses growing around construction sites, it's actually contributing to levels of pollen in the air. So it's interesting to observe how that season has also been shifting. It's generally moving ahead. So unfortunately, not a great time of year if you have seasonal allergies, but hopefully it won't be too bad of a season. Although I personally don't know what that's like, so it's not a great time of year if you have allergies.
There you go. And of course, it's Emergency Preparedness Week.
Yes, it is.
And this is always good information. And with weather events, we've seen it, and everybody knows the stories.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to rehash it, but it's real. And people need to be prepared because you never know what Mother Nature's going to dish out, right?
The wildfires, the floods, prime examples. Hurricanes, where you're forced to evacuate with little notice, especially at the coast. Even winter storms and blizzards can be, fall into that category of, events that you should have an emergency kit for.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can assemble your own kit. You can buy them. But, you should have the essentials in it, water, enough for your family. It's usually 2 liters per person per day. I know it sounds like a lot. Food, non-perishable, obviously, that won't spoil or won't expire for quite a while. A can opener for any of that food, wind-up or battery-powered flashlight with extra batteries, a first aid kit, extra keys, cash, checks, any important documents, and an emergency plan. And when I talk to people about this, I think it really takes almost, and I think more people appreciate it now that we've witnessed it firsthand how fast things can change. I think a lot of people I've spoken to over the years think, oh well, I'll have time to gather things up if we have awareness ahead of time that a hurricane is coming or whatnot. But we've seen that these events, especially wildfires and floods, happen without notice, and you have really just minutes to leave. And it's hard to gather everything up that you need in those few crucial minutes. So obviously, an emergency kit, you can't have everything in it because, you'd be carrying out multiple boxes of things. But, it is important to have those emergency kits with the basic items to, in case you do have to leave, that you have those essentials you can take with you, or in the event that we lose power, because the reality here in Nova Scotia is that power goes out quite often. And in some of these more extreme events, like such as hurricanes, the power can go out for multiple days. So it's important to have those essentials in your emergency kit so you can take it with you in case you have to leave, or you have those essential items in case of events like power or you can't get out of your home.
Okay, Allister, always great. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Allister Aalders, our weather specialist. Sports and Cecil when we come back. All right, time to talk sports with Cecil, our sports guru, Cecil Wright. Ha! How do you like me now?
Don't count your chickens before they hatch there, buddy boy.
Yeah, I knew you'd say that. I would have bet any amount of money you would have said that.
Yeah, well, the series isn't over. As Yogi said, it ain't over till it's over, and it ain't over.
Well, okay. Look, the Leafs have played damn good hockey. I think you would have to admit that.
Do I have to?
Yes, you have to.
Listen, they've won 2 one-goal games, 2 very close games. They've played well. I give them credit. But like I said, it's not over till it's over.
Well, obviously it's not over till it's over, but things are looking pretty good right now. I think you got to admit it, that at the very least.
Yeah, but right now isn't the end of the series. When the series is over, then you can brag.
Okay.
Then you can brag, not till then.
But then it'll be like, but they've only won the 2 rounds. They'll get blood. Until they win the cup, if they ever win the cup, you'll never relinquish this, will you?
That's right. And neither would you. If the situation was reversed, neither would you. Admit it.
That's right. I will admit it. But it would be nice for you to be a little more gracious, I think, once in a while. What do you think?
I just gave them credit, didn't I just say it? They played very well, and they're up 2-0. Yeah. 2 close games, against the defending champs.
Yeah.
They've done pretty darn well. Now, if they can keep it up and win this series, I will give them credit.
All right. What about Stolarz and Wall? I think Wall, the good thing to get a deep bench there with him.
Well, first of all, he's from Boston College. I have to throw that in there.
There you go.
But, I feel bad for Stolarz. So, holy cow. Here you are. You get your team here to the playoffs, and then this happens, and you're gone? Come on. That's terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I've got sympathy for you guys.
There you go. All right, let's talk Edmonton Oilers. They look good, eh?
Draisaitl just shows up in the playoffs.
Sure does.
Yeah. And McDavid knows that, and he looks for him at every opportunity. They're a great team, and you know, I just feel terrible because I don't know as much about the Western Conference teams. I keep saying that every week, but it's true.
Yeah.
You know, and now you get a chance to see them in the playoffs, and you know, you should already have an opinion formed on how good a team is before they get to the playoffs, not, you know, seeing what they do in the playoffs and then formulating how good you think they are based on that.
Yeah. Well, looks like the Jets are going to continue to kind of do it the hard way, losing their first game. What are your thoughts on the Jets, I suppose?
You know, I've been rooting for them all year long, and you know, it's not only because I think they got a good team; it's because they got my good buddy Dan Robertson on the call.
Yeah.
But you know, you got to give Vegas, you know, some credit too. I mean, it's not like they stink or anything like that. I think this is going to be the hardest hitting series out of them all, to be quite honest with you, you know, when it's all said and done. So I got my eye on this series too. Hopefully I can, you know, see all the games.
Yeah.
That's another difficult thing too. This time of the year when you got NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, you know, it's hard to see all the games.
Washington, Carolina, what are your thoughts on that series?
Well, I hate Washington, really. I do. I don't like them at all.
Yeah.
So I'll be rooting for Carolina, but I give Washington a lot of respect. You know, Ovechkin and all that stuff. You know, with the goals and everything. You know, goody for them. If it was up to me, though, I would rather see Carolina in the Eastern Conference Finals versus Florida.
Yeah. Yeah. Winnipeg's playing the Jets, by the way, not Vegas. Edmonton's playing Vegas.
Edmonton's playing Vegas. Oh yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
Well, that just goes to prove that there's just too many games.
All right, let's talk NBA. How about your Celtics? What the hell's going on there, bud?
You know, when you're up 20 points against any team, you should win the game, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And New York, to their credit, you know, they keep on coming back every time the Celtics get a big lead. The Celtics will go inside and pick up fouls and, you know, play the game that way. And then in the fourth quarter, they settle for outside jumpers. The shot doesn't fall. The Knicks get the rebound, come up and score. Celtics go down, shoot up another three that they misfire on. Knicks get the ball, come down and score. You know, you've got to take the ball inside in the playoffs. I know that means that there's going to be some bruises and hacks, but that's the way you have to win in the playoffs. And the Celtics should have learned that lesson by now. And I mean, you look at the Cleveland series with the Pacers, and the same thing is going on there. Cleveland gets out to a lead. The Pacers come right on back. They're up 2-0 over Cleveland, which just goes to prove that the regular season means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that's right. And how about Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon reuniting to play for the men's hockey team at the Worlds? That's impressive stuff right there, folks.
You know, if the only thing that would have been better than that is if Florida got knocked out and they could have had the 3 Nova Scotians.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe the Leafs can help them out with that. What do you think?
I don't think so. I don't think so. It'd be too late by this. I see this game going 7 personally, the series.
Yeah.
And I think that would just be great for you, because imagine how excited you would be if the Leafs were in a Game 7, had a chance to knock off the defending champions. You'd be happy.
I certainly would be, but they'd have to get it done for me to be actually happy.
You mean you wouldn't be happy if they took the defending champs to 7 games?
No, I wouldn't be. Not unless they win. They have to win. They have to get to a conference final. That's where I'm at. That's my line in the sand, Cecil. What do you think?
Well, you know, I give you props for that. You know, I thought you would say, no, I'd be happy if they went 7 games.
No.
Well, you know, just don't hang your expectations on them winning the cup, okay?
All right, man. Anything local before I let you go?
Nothing going on for me. Baseball starts a week from tonight, Senior League. The Metro Brewers, I think they're hosting Dartmouth, and you know how good Dartmouth has been historically. They're defending champs and going to the Nationals. So looking forward to another great summer of baseball.
Okay, bud. And the Yankees are still in first place in the American League East. Just wanted to get that in there.
For the moment.
All right, pal. Talk soon.
All right, have a good one.
All right, take care. Cecil Wright, sports guru. Thanks to Vanessa Van Ness on the other side of the glass at the control board, doing a fine job as always. We're back on Monday, 10 o'clock. See you then.